This woman, a Labour MP, Rosie Duffield, who has been ostracised by a party in many, is hit out at a primary school for getting young kids to pose with a trans-inclusive pride flag, which updates the traditional rainbow to include pale pink and blue stripes to represent transgender people, while others waved paper versions. Rosie Duffield said this is an absolute disgrace. We're delighted to be joined now by a lady from an organisation that speaks more sense than we do here on Talk. Director of Campaigns for Sex Matters, she won't mind me doing it, Fiona McAnena. How are you, Fiona?
I'm very well, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm all right, mate, but this is just another example, is it not, of how we are infiltrating our young children's minds with... I just find it appalling, Fiona. Tell us more.
The problem here is that children have no frame of reference to make any sense of this. So we got two things. We got the pride part of it. Well, these children haven't had sex education yet, so they don't know what that means. And then we've got the trans part of it. And that's the dangerous part, I think, because you're telling little children that people can change sex. And they're being told that in school, where they believe everything they're told. And maybe, you know, it's no coincidence that we've had this massive increase over the last several years in this country of children presenting to gender identity clinics saying, I think I'm in the wrong body. Because if you learn that in school, you're going to end up thinking maybe it applies to you. So I agree with Rosie Duffield. These tiny children should be left alone. They don't need this stuff. I
think it's really interesting, and everybody knows I've got 6 kids. This whole quest to, you know, young kids. I feel almost as if we're trying to get kids to grow up too quickly. We're trying to give them too much information. They're over-sexualised. I don't remember any of this when I was a kid, Fiona. I think it's genuinely dangerous. I know it's a difficult question. At what point should one start having the conversation or whatever, but not at the age that this school and other schools are advocating it in any which way.
Yes, and the last government had consultation out before the election was called saying that gender identity should not be taught at all before the age of 9. Now, you might question why you're ever going to teach gender identity, because as far as I know, most people don't have one. So it's a highly contested concept. But of course, it's appropriate to teach children to be tolerant of difference, to teach them that some people only have one parent, some people have 2 mummies, 2 daddies, but that's nothing to do with sex, and it's nothing to do with thinking you might be in the wrong body. So,
do you know what's great about what you just said? There is nothing wrong with teaching them about tolerance. There's a difference between teaching them about tolerance, Fiona, and teaching that perhaps is a way they should consider going with their lives. I completely agree with you. It's dangerous.
Yes, and there's one more thing to think about here, which is in the world of flags that this movement has created, and we've seen the Progress Pride flag here that's got every colour you can imagine. There is, of course, a flag for the vanilla types like you and me, and that flag is grey, black and white. Now, what child is going to choose that flag when there are all these other ones instead? So they're really making it a very enticing, very attractive prospect to think that you as a child belong somehow in this special community instead of just being ordinary. And that's not helpful either for children.
Why have we allowed schools to be sharing images that promote... You see, it's such a difficult... I love Sex Matters because I think that you guys speak such sense. I've said it before. Why have we got to a point where seemingly... Now, I'm going to get into trouble, but there you go. What is normal to me, that's the best way to describe it, and is normal to you, is so ostracised that we're allowing our schools to be infiltrated with people telling our children that norm is not norm and this is the norm. That's normal if it's normal to you, but I think like we're almost saying to people, go for this. It's something to be part... That's terrible.
Well, I think a lot of people who've been labelled as part of this community would agree with what you've just said. I know plenty of gay men and lesbians who would say, and bisexual women too, I know, who would say, I don't want children to have all this foisted upon them. Let them just be children, and when they grow up, then we'll teach them what they need to know.
Do you think that this government will be any different to the last government? Do you think that, I mean, their behaviour, their treatment in opposition of Rosie Duffield, who had the courage and the strength to talk about women's rights and children's rights, she got completely ostracised. I'm glad to see she's back in Parliament. I thought she's a fantastic lady. Do you think this government will just carry this on? Because I don't see how this ends, do you?
Well, I think there's been a sea change over the last few years across the political spectrum, actually. And I think, you know, the Conservatives presided over some of this stuff and then started to pull some of it back in the last couple of years. I think there have been shifts in Labour's positions as well. They were in favour of self-ID, that you could change your birth certificate just on your say-so. That got changed. That was not in the new manifesto. So I think we are seeing across the political spectrum people beginning to understand that tolerance for people who feel uncomfortable with their sex or whatever the issue might be is not the same as having to push that at children. We're definitely seeing, I think, some change.
And anybody who sticks up like J.K. Rowling or Sharon Davis about the sports, we've had both on this show. Well, we've had Sharon Davis on the show, not J.K. Rowling, but seems to be ostracised. So are your organisation, is that ostracised and slagged off continually?
There's quite a lot of criticism, yes, but there are other people who understand that if you're talking sense, if you're reasonable, if you're tolerant, and you're representing particularly the opinions and the needs of half the population, then that's a conversation that needs to be heard. I mean, we're for everyone's human rights, Jeremy, not just women, not just girls or children, but everyone. And sometimes the demands of one group are in conflict with the needs of another, and we're the people who are going to point that out.
And I think the needs of all sorts of groups are very important, but I don't think the needs of any particular group are helped by this activist sort of lobby that attaches itself to points of interest and then turns it into warfare, which I always find quite ironic because they're always supposed to be peaceful people. A real pleasure to have you on. I really, really appreciate it as ever. Thank you, Fiona. I really appreciate it.